Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for prize fighters, circus freaks, and gangsters. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greta.
And as always, we are discussing the food, fashion, fraud, and fun. And what other F did I forget? Food, fashion, fraud, fun.
Fighting.
Yes. Fisticuffs. There's a lot of them.
There you go.
And we cover all of that in this podcast. And we're still in Shogun. We are episode 3. We're at the last episode that we can watch so far. So that did it give you anxiety with the cliffhanger? I really wanted to see what was going to happen.
Oh, I was just enjoying this once again, and I'm excited for this episode because in the first two we're really world building and setting up the characters and figuring out who everybody is, and now we're gonna do stuff, and it gets cool.
All right, well, let's get into it.
So before you sort of figured out what was going on here, what did you think these guys were up to in the cold open where they were writing something?
I didn't have any idea. Like in this, I'm always kind of mystified because Japanese culture is really kind of a historical blind spot for me in a lot of regards. So I had no earthly idea. What did you think they were writing?
At first, yeah, I didn't know. And then he says, that's a goodwill. And because we've been doing so much crime, I was like, are these guys forging wills? Oh, and then, yeah, I figured out later that no. Like he was writing his will because he was pretty sure he'd done messed up and was about to get his head lopped off.
Yep. Oh my God. Can you imagine living in a society where every mistake means you gotta die about it? That just seems exhausting. It would institute either severe anxiety or just societal fatalism, and I think kind of that's what they went with. Or maybe it just depends on the personality type. Yeah, doesn't seem like they didn't develop any analysis paralysis from it, that's for sure.
Well, I guess it helps when one of your core beliefs is reincarnation. So you're like, well, if I mess up this time, I'll get another shot in 40 days. So that's cool.
There you go. Yeah, I'll just restart the game.
Yep.
Gotta respawn.
Huh. Wow. Okay, so
that really is what it is. You're respawning because you're coming back with you don't necessarily know you have that knowledge, but apparently you have more of a soul, right? Your soul continues to develop from life to life.
Or, well, yeah. You sort of get the chance to fix mistakes from the past. Like you're gonna get punished for anything bad you did in the last life, but you have the chance to kind of work on it this life. So. But it just started making me think about Japanese video game development and the idea of respawning and how that plays into a cultural acceptance of reincarnation. Okay, my little brain just went bzzz.
That's very fun.
Okay, but back to the 17th century.
All right. See, there my head went to Edge of Tomorrow because I feel like that is like the ultimate... this is like the ultimate of where it could go because it is, Tom Cruise redoing the same day. It's Groundhog Day of him fighting aliens, but there's a lot of that Japanese anime mecha kind of a feel to it, and he's fighting with a sword for no reason. So I feel like that's kind of the ultimate
sword for no reason. It's because swords are cool.
But if you're in a giant fighting robot, I feel like swords would not be involved.
Anyway, we get to learn a little bit about what was going on with that assassin who was trying to take out John Blackthorne, the Anjin-san. She was apparently part of this secret society called the Society of the Buddha Amida.
Yes, they were this is one of the few times in this show so far where it's fictitious. There was no such clan. There were only 2 clans of ninjas. They were the Iga and the Koga. So that was it. They didn't come in any other flavor. But,
okay, so so I guess the whole religious fanaticism aspect of it comes from the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Insofar as I could find, there weren't any Christian ninjas.
No, that would seem to not work out.
Yeah, devoting your entire life to working as a servant just for the opportunity to eventually kill a baby who will grow into a man who will be the regent of a place. I don't feel like that's a Christian ideal. Well, maybe now, but it wasn't then.
No. They would do it much more sloppily.
Yes. Yeah, but nobody could keep that kind of dedication over the course of a lifetime.
No. So this was really fun because you've got Toranaga, he's the guy who always wears brown, telling Yabashuge that, look, you screwed up, you betrayed me. However, I can't just go around killing all the guys that are sometimes helpful to me. And, you're competent, so let's make a deal.
I still have not noticed the color-coded clothing. Still have not. Even though you've brought it up multiple times, it just does not hit me any of the times that I watch it. And I've rewatched this episode 3 times now.
It's funny. For me, I need that crutch, and so I'm always going to throw that in there because, I think different viewers are going to key in on these individuals different ways. And for me, keying in like, okay, that's the red guy, that's the brown guy, that's the blue guy. That will always help me keep track of who's who.
It's all Power Rangers all the time for you.
Oh yeah. And because I'm a little bit bad at faces, it takes a while for faces to stick in my brain.
Faces don't stick in my brain at all. I just go with context. That's how I know. Who's that guy? Oh, it's the guy who's mad at that guy. That's about all I got.
There we go. Okay. So anyway, yeah, Toranaga is just like, all right, you know what? Let's do the deal. And Yabashuge realizes like, today is not the day I'm going to die. So yeah, let us watch the sunrise. It is really pretty.
I thought they were going to die when he said, why don't you watch the sunrise with me? I was like, is he going to kill himself? What the hell is happening now? No, but they were just taking in the sunrise.
No. Yeah, that's just the whole aesthetic appreciation. I mean, you can't be this obsessed with your presentation and how long your chin tie straps are if you're just not into aesthetics generally.
All right. Well, hey, and they had no TV. They didn't have the morning news. So what the fuck else are you going to watch? I guess the sun.
Yeah. And so we've got sort of that side of business being sorted out. And then we get to be around the Portuguese. And, the Portuguese are being made to suck it. And the captain of the boat is mad. He's very mad. Very, very mad.
Yeah, he's big mad. He is bigly mad.
And you could just sort of see like and it was really funny going from, the Japanese people in like their nice clean robes, and these guys, you can see how stinky they are.
Yeah, and it's like they intentionally go underground or something every time they're indoors. It's like they're indoors underground, or they're in like some creaky old shitty ship. They're like, just get on land and live like a human being. But they're like filthy bilge rats that are stuffed aboard this disgusting ship, demanding that they be set free.
I mean, his worry about the wind is valid because, again, wind-driven ships, and the winds are very seasonal in that part of the world. And so if he doesn't catch the wind going the right direction, the season's going to change, and he's going to have to fight the wind all the way to get back to China. And that would make everything take way longer. And, there might be storms.
Plus, as we find out, the winter weather is apparently not as pleasant in Japan as they're experiencing now. So I guess it's, I don't know what winter storms are like on a boat, but it probably sucks.
A lot. In fact, there was just a thing here in Seattle where we had some stormy weather this weekend, and a boat, basically, there were waves so big that this 40-foot cabin cruiser, the windshield was broken.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Yeah. So a ferry and then a Coast Guard cutter had to block the wind and waves so they could do the rescue. And anyway, yeah, you don't want to be at sea in the winter. It's not fun.
I don't want to be at sea unless it's aboard a cruise ship. And that's, I mean, I've been on a trimaran and catamaran. I used to sail and things like that, but that was not at sea. We stayed by near the shore. It was not, I don't want to be in any open ocean boat venture. No, thank you.
And you do quite a bit of open ocean to get from Nagasaki to the port that the Portuguese were using by Macau, which is basically Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's the South China Sea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, to get to lovely Macau. So they get to go from gorgeous Japan to a swamp filled with disgusting Portuguese pirates. Oh, and ethnically Indian Catholic priests who were no longer allowed to go to Japan because they only wanted white priests in Japan.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, because they were originally flooding the Japanese islands with the what do they call them? The Japans.
The Japans, yeah.
They were flooding the Japans with Catholic priests from India. They were coming from Goa to Macau and then from Macau to Japan. But then they expelled all the Indians because they were too dirty and brown. And the Japanese also had the idea that Catholicism was an Indian religion. So they couldn't, yeah.
Well, I do know that just like Americans and some Europeans, the Japanese definitely do have a system of colorism, and sort of like the darker you are, the less respectable you are.
Oh, well, yeah, they are pretty fantastic at racism.
And so, so that sense of colorism, I mean, that is a big thing that is going to matter in the 19th century, whether you're too dark. I mean, that is definitely something that happens in both places at both times.
And yet their first foreign samurai was, again, African-born and not Portuguese. I just love that so much.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes novelty is just a heck of a thing. So, yeah. So anyway, the Portuguese captain, he wants to get out of there, and we're sort of left hanging because we get to see a doctor. A Japanese doctor, because this cracked me all the way up. So yeah, this looks like a guy in our modern sort of context. I'm like, okay, he looks like reasonably good. That's a clean cloth. He's gently sort of treating this wound, and John Blackthorne is like, what are you doing? Why aren't you bleeding me? Why are you being so gentle with me? This is terrible.
Tell this man that he needs to bleed me. He needs to get out the foul blood or whatever. And she's like, I am not familiar with that procedure, but I assure you he's an actual doctor and knows what he's doing.
And then the doctor says the most wonderful thing. He's like, seems kind of tense. Does he seem tense to you? He seems tense. What should he do about that tenseness?
Yeah. This man doesn't need a doctor. What he needs is to get laid.
He needs to get laid. Oh, my God.
And then John Blair, he just gets mad. He's like, he's not even a warlock. He's a pimp.
And then he's even offered a boy. And so totally to your point, over and over again, when we were dealing with this in the 19th century, this sort of like idea of homosexuality, heterosexuality, the divide in the 19th century, that's new. The Japanese are just sort of like, well, as long as everybody participating, at least the rich people who are participating, it's all consensual.
Let's be a little clear on when she said boy, she did actually mean in the old Roman and Greek relationship of they were very big on, I'm going to quote unquote tutor this boy with my penis in his butt.
And that's what I'm saying. As long as it's consensual for the rich person, the Japanese were fine with it. The poor people...
It was Republican consent. Did the rich older man say yes? Then the yes was yes for all. Thank you. He'll be ordering for all of us as well.
Oh, shit. There you go. It was consensual. Yeah, I mean, if you're born into the prostitute class, then, well, that's just your fate. So there you are.
Oh, wow. So little boys were born into a prostitute class, too. That's...
Well, pregnant prostitutes don't just have girls.
Yeah, that's true. Was there a male geisha then? Or was there a kind of a... Because there was a third gender in most of the Pacific Islander cultures. Well, there were many, many genders. But so does that gender exist in Japanese culture? I didn't even think to look that up.
I have no idea. I didn't look that up either. And sort of as geishas go, I don't think there were geishas who geisha'd as men, but there were definitely men who quote unquote cross-dressed.
That's what I was talking about.
And performed as female geishas.
Gotcha. Yes, that's where I was going with that.
Because that's the other thing that a lot of people don't get by the way that they were introduced to geisha culture in America is a lot of geishas and the highest class geishas almost never have sex with their customers.
Oh yeah, they were just they're as like
they're entertainers.
entertainers, and also like they were there to have intelligent conversation. That's a lot of their education was to be able to converse intelligently with these rich and important people, right?
Right. They were like super duper professional party hosts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, John Blackthorne is definitely not going to find any of this out because he can't get over himself. And of course, Mariko's a little bit blindsided because was her father confessor discussing sexual mores with her? God, no. He's a dude. You can't talk about sex with somebody of the opposite sex if you're a priest.
that makes sense. Also, going back to the geisha thing, while you were talking, I just was thinking, that's amazing. They have a built-in retirement job. Mm-hmm. Like, they just kind of gradually morph into this more matronly household planner, personal assistant type.
However,
thing.
Quite a few of them would end up as kind of menial servants because sort of the head of a house, like there's tons of geishas, but there's only sort of one person who can become the head of the house. So a lot of them do end up just sort of being menial servants in the house.
Gotcha.
I mean, yes, for some of them, but they still do have a roof over their head. So it could be way worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And they would have protection as well. I mean, there's, the more I learn about Japanese culture, the more fascinating it is. It's just there's so much more nuance than appeared. From such a rigid structure on the outside, you don't expect as much nuance, I guess, from kind of a monolithic exterior.
I mean, there is definitely, even though it is an authoritarian culture, there are a lot of places a person can go to find the right fit for themselves within the culture.
Gotcha.
Because it is so complex.
That makes sense.
Unless you're a woman, then you just continually get screwed. But if you're a rich woman, you're less screwed a lot of the time. But speaking of
these Japanese women could at least have property, so they at least had something there. They weren't property; they could own property.
But then we get to meet the mean husband, and he just sort of comes in. He's like, "Wife, we're leaving." So Mariko's like, okay, bye, I guess.
And this is now I see where the Will Adams and Englishman softcore porn novel came from. Right in this scene when he was like, "I am the gruff, tough man, and you are just a stupid woman. So I am going to go off and do manly things, stupid woman." And then she goes and hangs out with the gruff but sensitive Englishmen, and hijinks ensue.
Yes. So speaking of yet another woman who's in a bad way, I think this is Fujiko, I think is what her name is, but she was the woman in the first episode whose husband and baby were cremated, and so she's presented with these 2 boxes wrapped in white because that's the funeral and mourning color in Japan and a lot of East Asian cultures. But I was just like, that's brutal, and she has to thank them for this. They didn't
show us how they killed the baby, but I will admit the way I imagined it was them just tossing the baby up in the air and slicing it in half with their samurai sword, because they were really on that type time.
I'm
glad they did not show it, but yeah.
I spent 0 time imagining that, but wow, yeah. Just blah.
Well, I just, my brain always goes back to these people managed to make Joseph Mengele look like Patch Adams in World War II. So they could they could do some wild shit.
Oh, yeah. All of that repressed emotion, I guess, had to go somewhere. But it is interesting that as much as this woman is just like being squashed into these painful situations, women are included in the class of fighters. I mean, apparently as like the ninja, or at least the assassin, and then as samurai nobles, like these women are taught to use weapons. Not all of them, but some of them. Like, that's as much as like everything else that Blackthorne finds unimaginable. You'd think he would be amazed at this.
Yeah. Hopefully they get in more into, because we've only seen like 1 or 2 archers, really. I mean, we've seen archery happen, but like up close, We've only seen 1 or 2 archers. And Japanese archery is a really like important art in Japan. Do you know anything about it? The art of Zen archery?
I've read sort of the famous English language book, there is a pretty famous book that I read in college about Zen archery. That's about somebody going and training an American going and training in Zen archery in Japan.
Cool.
I'll have to look that up and throw that in the show notes. But there's also sort of like him realizing he was being a dick, trying to shortcut the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you can't.
But I was going to say, it seems like, and I seem to recall women being very participatory in archery because they had that, like, it was almost like an English longbow, so it didn't take as much physical strength to draw the bow. Yeah,
because they're doing, when we see all the archery in this episode, they're doing a lot of it at pretty close quarters. They're not like shooting over castle walls kind of thing. I mean, they might do that too.
Yeah, but they did actually have a pretty impressive range, but it was a really odd thing to see a Japanese guy with one of those bows on horseback, because I'm so used to seeing the Mongols with their tiny composite bows.
Little short bows, yeah.
Yeah, and so seeing somebody with that huge thing on horseback just never occurred to me, because you always see English longbowmen, the whole thing was they were
on the
footmen.
ground.
They could be anybody, yeah. Just get a birch tree and you got an archer. So it was a very different take on the same basic idea.
Yeah, sort of seeing that replicated in a bunch of different ways. And it's really funny here. Women here are doing archery like as a weapon, whereas women in Europe and America in the 19th century, the 18th century, 19th century, were doing archery as amusement.
Oh, were they not doing it for hunting?
Possibly. I mean, in the Middle Ages, women definitely did do archery for hunting, but I'm talking about like the lawn parties where women would do archery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Instead of like lawn bowling, they did archery.
It was sort of one of the other sports these bored women who weren't allowed to do anything sort of took up.
Gotcha. Yeah, you can only play so much croquet, so let's go fire some bows and arrows. I think that would make much more fun.
Right, but they had to be careful so as not to, get too bulky. Ew.
Well, plus they couldn't breathe because they were being strangled by their corsets, so I can imagine it's probably pretty hard to draw a bow in a corset.
Well, I mean, they would have like sports corsets, and you lace them tighter or looser, and so the dress that you would wear to go do activities would be a looser dress.
So it's more like Spanx rather than you're in a prison.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about how corsets worked and what they did, and so on and so forth. But on an everyday basis, a corset is basically functioning as a bra, and just and Spanx. The whole tight lacing can't breathe. That was done for like special occasions or for very young women to show them off, and definitely prostitutes because, male fantasy. But for most women, most of the time, it's a bra, basically.
All right. And then, so the Japanese women just used, their kimono was like a wrap underneath or something like that? It was multiple layers of a wrap.
Oh, yeah. There were several layers and different wrap, but also there would be sort of different strips of cloth doing different things.
Oh, okay. It still blows my mind. The Minoans had a bra, and then we didn't see it again until, 1919 or some craziness?
Oh, no. It showed up lots of different times in lots of different places. It's just the corset was well established and practical for a lot of other reasons.
Oh, yeah. I guess the bra is a very delicate garment.
And also, bras without elastic are not as useful as you'd think. And so when elastic happened, that's when bras became preferable to corsets.
I feel like clothes began to exist when elastic happened.
No real clothes before Lycra.
Yeah, I don't acknowledge the existence of jeans before these jegging style jeans either. Like, I don't want regular jeans anymore. Just give me the stretch business. The other stuff feels like I have hay on my skin.
Anyway, let's get back to this.
Shogun.
Yes, Shogun. And so all of a sudden, John Blackthorne and Mariko are told, like, whoop, sorry, guys, there was a plan here, but now there's a different plan. And a very Japanese turn of phrase here, John Blackthorne is like, hey, but I want to speak to Lord Toranaga. And Mariko does not say no. She says it will not be possible.
Yes, that will not be possible. And she just, like, as she glides out of the room, it was really, really slick. I put that in my mental bank. I was like, ooh, I'm going to use that later in life.
Yeah, and so now I'm going to just be, like, checking to see if anybody who's Japanese doesn't directly refuse him, or if they do, kind of maybe like somebody who had a higher rank than him, but she's a woman, so she's not gonna do that.
I also find it very interesting the difference in how she translates compared to how the Jesuit translates when they're speaking to a Japanese person or to or to a white person. Their deference goes in a different direction. It's very interesting.
Yes. So basically, we got to get out of here. Let's get everybody in the road. And oh my God, did you get a load of those traveling vehicles that those women are going to have to ride in?
So these are sedan chairs? Is that what that is called?
Basically, yeah. Like, I don't know what the Japanese name for them is.
Okay, except it's like a lockbox sedan chair, because it's like barely big enough for them to get into. There's no airflow, nothing. And the thing closes and locks. It's crazy.
Oh
what do you
my God.
Piss?
I was just like, I had never seen anything like that. I mean, you sort of think about kind of like the loose floppy cloth things that the Romans were riding around in, the frames with the curtains that the Chinese are going around in. And this
is like a coffin, but they're seated.
Right. It is a box that closes. Thunk. No window. Oh my God. How do they not get car sick? Whoa.
With no airflow in there, just baking in your own juices. Oh God, what a nightmare.
Oh my God. I'm like, that was the worst nightmare.
Yeah, it gives you anxiety just to look at it. Like, let's not talk about it anymore. It was horrible. But they locked 2 women in those things for their own protection.
Yes, one of them was the sad. No, it was the pregnant consort, and then the other one was Lady Curie, who is sort of the older wife who seems to be kind of this powerful badass. And dun dun dun, they're about to sort of do something sneaky, and boom, blue guy Ishido walks in, and he's just like, let me see everybody. Rah!
Yeah, we're seeing Sun Tzu in effect, because the whole point of the art of war is to avoid fighting at all, like whenever possible, and to evade contact with people, and to disguise yourself and whatever, and disguise your intentions. And so they are pretending like they're escorting these 2 women out, when in fact they are switching out Lord Toranaga and the other man. Who's the other man?
What?
Because they're trying to smuggle them out of this fortress so they can't be captured by the Shogun's
they're
men,
swapping
right?
out Lord Toranaga because, you can, in the past 2 episodes, it's like, you can see forces arrayed against him. And do you mean Blackthorn? Just getting him out? Because they're not smuggling him out so much.
Oh, no. Oh, that's what it was. So the one lady makes a big show as she's coming out. She takes her time coming out and makes a big show showing up so that everybody knows and sees, like, oh, you're late. We're waiting on you and all that. And that's the woman they switch out. The other woman is an actual woman, but yeah, and they get a big lady. She's a big older lady, and
that's Lady Curie. That's Toranaga's older wife, and it wasn't the pregnant woman. It was the sad girl whose family just got killed. She's the other one that's leaving, because pregnant lady, she does the whole like, oh, my water, and gets everybody to look at her.
Oh, yep.
And that's when, whoop, swapsies happens. Yeah.
And then they get stopped, and then John Blackthorne gets to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, and it was fun sort of watching Blackthorne and Mariko walk next to each other, because he's like, he's in a kimono and on those sandals that he's not so comfortable walking on, but he still looks like he's walking normally, but you can see her going I'm like, how far is she gonna have to take those tiny little restricted steps? Like, wow.
It's funny to watch all the men do it though, when they are going to like speak to their lord or whatever, and they walk into his room. They do the the little walk. We're both doing our fingers as we do the as the little feet are going. But yeah, watching the men do it just cracks me up every time. I giggle.
Yes, but oh God, that's got to be tiring. And so, but fortunately, they don't have to walk for too long because there's an ambush. And this is where we get to see a lot of the arrow work and the fire arrows. And that was a cool scene. And the lighting on that was just, that was great.
Yeah. And it's fun. We get to see Bushido in action, although we don't actually get to see, like, nobody actually tells him, like, Bushido, but he's starting to understand, like, the Japanese code of Bushido and, like, the pride and the honor thing that goes into it.
Yeah, and so you understand that the Jesuits are somehow involved in this because you hear a gun. If it were just Japanese troops, there wouldn't have been gunshots.
I had not thought of that.
Yeah. And so you see it's Kiyama, the red guy, who's working with the Portuguese because they're sending him lots of money.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And all the different crests that you see on the different helmets, some of Kiyama's guys have different versions of the cross on their helmets. Instead of moons or floral or crescents or all sorts of other stuff. Yeah.
I was just enjoying that there's always a running sword fight through a fishing village to a dock in samurai movies. I don't know why, but I was just enjoying that. I did not notice any of the costumes or any of that. It was a very fun fight to watch, though.
Yeah, so what did you think about... So Mariko she's like, she can fight, and she obviously picks up the best weapon to deal with dudes with swords, and she's just like, this little person is the longest thing she can get to keep the guy.
She grabs that halberd, that pole arm.
And so I was like, here the John Blackthorne character is being Superman again. Like, he just wades in, picks up a weapon he's never held, and he's just like wielding it like he knows what he's doing or something.
Well, I imagine he's covered in scars, so he's seen his fair share of battles, and at some point a sword is a sword is a sword. Like, the heft is going to be the same, and it's going to move differently, but you're still going to be able to handle it. And this guy's done a lot of sword fighting in his life, I would imagine.
Fair enough.
As the navigator for a ship.
Yeah. A cutlass. It's got a pokey thing on the end, and so at some point you just become Father June. It's called a shotgun. You pick it up and shoot. It's called it's a poking weapon. You pick it up and poke people with it.
Yeah. Pokety.
Yes.
And then Mariko's husband makes a tremendous last stand as he's defending everybody as they're trying to get on the boats and get away from the docks. And
yes,
that is where we get to see the Bushido just...
Yes.
At its finest, and he knows it's a lost cause, and he gets the salute from his lord, and then he's like, "Rah! I'm not even going to do anything that's even remotely tactical. I'm just going to attack.
Today is a good day to die."
Yes.
And you're looking at Mariko's face, and she's just like, I have wished for this guy's death on many, many occasions. I'm not sure how I feel about watching it go down, though.
But at the same time, she's side-eyeing John, and she's like, "Bro, I'm single now." I don't know if you noticed, but, yeah.
Yeah.
She's already changing her status on her phone. She's like, yeah. No, he's not dead yet, but he's about to be. It's fine. I'm just going to get it to, maybe she'll spend an hour on
looking
on the questioning relationship and then switch it to single.
Yeah, there you go.
It's complicated right now.
But then we get to go to another one of the scenes on here that I thought was so fun, where John Blackthorne and Rodriguez, who I still love, are doing Yo Mama.
Oh, yeah. Screaming it so they are now trying to pull up aside the black ship so that they can get out of the harbor, because there's all these fishing boats filled with pirates waiting to kill them, and the only way they can get through is if they have the guns.
Because you've got
on the
all the
pirate
samurai
ship,
in the
right?
fishing boats with their arrows, and they probably have fire pots on there, ready to do it all. And they start doing something sneaky, and Lord Toranaga goes on the black ship, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm the foreign relations guy. I say you can leave if you take me with you."
Yeah, and take all my friends. And they're like, "Well, take all your friends except for that fucking white guy."
And as you said, what an upstanding citizen that captain is, because he's like, "Yeah, I don't need your stinking papers to leave this. But, your permission does me no good. Give me something more, dude."
And so I don't know what a tail compares to in modern parlance. Do you? It's a Chinese. That's an old Chinese term. The tails.
Yeah,
they used to pay everything in tails.
Yeah. No, I think it's a pretty valuable thing. I think for sort of use in our brains, think of it as like a English guinea. Like it's a coin of significant value.
Oh, okay, cool.
Like, I don't know exactly what it would be, but yeah, it's the big coin.
Yeah, so he's basically like, I will give you $100 million if you take me out of here.
And you can have half the profit from the invest. He's like, oh, money. I like money. And I just sort of love.
Oh, and he also offers that the little Jesuit weirdo his own church in his capital, and he's like, "Woo, woo! I get a church! The Portuguese captain's like, "Who gives a fuck about your church? Nobody.
Exactly.
Nobody
but
cares.
That shows
Shut
you
up."
that Toranaga definitely has been reading his briefing packets, because he's like, I can totally get over this captain with silver, but the Jesuits are going to go like, oh, my son, worldly wealth, we're too good for that. So
it is so.
It's like, I know what you're not
funny
too
to
good
see
for.
these reactions. I went from a Catholic to an Episcopalian church for a little while, and then back to Catholic church, and Episcopalian church was just like nicer Catholics. They were just, they had their chill turned up a little bit. So when I'm reading these old stories and like Jonathan Swift, where he's like, goddamn papists, I'm like, what is the deal? But it's funny to see it going both ways. Like, Jonathan Swift is on the other side of the ocean, suggesting everybody should just eat Catholic babies so that the poor people don't starve. Like, it's better to just eat Catholic babies.
Oh my God, Jonathan Swift would have written for TMZ. That's all I'm going to say.
He would have loved being in Japan at this time. Oh my God, he would have had a ball.
But the kicker is, at the end of all this wheeling and dealing with Toranaga and the Portuguese dudes, is the Portuguese dudes hand over to him, here's the proof that your dude is a pirate. Here you go. Read it yourself.
Yeah. You should kill him. You should totally kill him. He's a pirate. And take these documents that you can't read as proof.
Yep. And so the black ship takes off without John Blackthorne, and John Blackthorne says, nah.
Nah, I'm driving a Japanese galley, and we're going to race this fucking ship. And so he just starts screaming at the rowers to row faster, and they race to the... they're not racing. They're trying to just keep pace.
Sneak ahead.
Well, at first they're just trying to keep pace of the ship, but then the captain wants the navigator to run the John Blackthorne into the rocks, and so then they start racing him. And so there's this huge jetty of rocks that they narrowly avoid crush, and like all their oars just barely start hitting the jetty when they scoop past in this little race. But the navigator lets them go, and he even says like, "All right, Englishman, like that's I just paid you back for saving my life in the past."
Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing, Rodriguez, he's totally our Wong Chao character. He's always going to float. Like, he is not going to make an extra enemy if he can help it, and he will always be picking up another favor if he can.
Yeah, well, this guy already saved his life one time, so who knows how many times he could save it in the future. So
I really hope we see him again, because, dude, he is a fun character. I hope he doesn't just sail off to China and we never see him again. I'd be bummed.
No, I'm sure we'll see him again. He's definitely fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, I don't want to... Well, it's not a spoiler because we're doing the episode now anyway, but like I feel like Blackthorne's going to hire him at some point.
That would, because if he's going to get his boat back, he needs to hire a crew. But we get,
because he's going to be the captain, he'll need he'll need the navigator.
Right. But yeah, we get the it's your fault, it's your fault. We get the Power Rangers back together with. We get Kiyama, who's red, Ishido, who's blue, oh no, our leprosy guy, and Sugiyama, who has no lines. They're like, it's your fault they got away. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. They were just going after each other.
Oh, by the way, wasn't it fun to see the difference in size between the two ships?
Yes.
I mean, the Portuguese ship was like 5 times the size of this Japanese ship, which was carrying a very important Japanese lord.
Yes. Yes, but most of the time, I mean, that was part of the thing, I think, in the first episode, is they're like, yeah, what do you mean we're going to go away from the shore? Like, that's terrifying. These galleys were usually just like shoreside ships.
Yeah,
So-
like you said, they were like Viking longships, which were
Yeah,
not
yeah.
built for, well, mostly not built for the open ocean. They did have ocean-faring ones, but initially they were really big on staying to the shore.
Right, because again, they're just and this is why like staying on the shore is when all you have is a compass. You need to use land as dead reckoning. Having the astrolabe is sort of what allowed a lot of this sort of like global sailing to get going. I'm not sure what instruments or what instrumentation the Chinese were using when they were doing their global sailing, but I do know that European sailing was able to become global and into the open ocean with the astrolabe.
I don't know either. I know I read that book 1492 25 years ago, but I do not remember how they allegedly navigated across the open ocean to the Pacific.
Well, remember the Chinese stopped sailing far and wide in the 8th century.
No, there was a Zheng He I thought it was the 15th century. He was a great
Possibly.
admiral, and they think that he made it to South America. It was called 1453
okay.
or something. It was a really popular, like, mass market history book that came out around the time of Gun Germ Steel.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to go look that up and figure out where I've got my dates wrong. Okay. So now we finally find out why Toranaga getting away is such a big deal, and it's because bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah, we had a total Buckley scene right here with this, like, politicians' outrage at the unrest. It was the exact same shit as Buckley is doing in the 19th century.
Yeah.
So that was a fun well, it wasn't really a crossover, but it was a fun parallel.
Yeah, Toranaga totally gets to say, haha, you can't fire me, I quit. And now you can't do anything, you can't get rid of me because your committee's too small to get rid of me. So neener. I mean, yeah, this was definitely using the rules to your advantage and stymieing. Yeah, that was fun stuff.
Yeah. And everybody loves those sticklers for the rules, don't they? Oh, they are fun to have around.
And yet it works much better in Japan, especially at this point, because everybody nobody who's in charge is really wanting to be the guy who says screw the rules, because if you say screw the rules, then their position is gone. So they're like, nope, we have to stay within the rules, we're keeping the rules, because I don't know what to do if there's no rules.
Yeah, it's amazing they didn't invent carbon paper just out of the fact they loved bureaucracy so much. You didn't do it in triplicate. Nobody has any idea who's not old as shit what we're talking about. But back in the day, for any form you had to fill out, rather than doing it on your phone, you had to do it in triplicate, which was 3 different pieces of paper that were different color that smelled really cool. That you'd write on the top one and it would transfer to the other ones, and then you would hand the pink one to somebody and the yellow one to somebody and keep the white one.
Yes. God, yeah, you'll still see them around occasionally, but yeah. Well, a brush-based writing system doesn't really lend itself to...
No, because you can't really make an impression on the pages underneath.
No. In fact, the first sort of chemical base, like here I'm going to brush something on this and press something on it and just do like a copy of an original document, they were developing that in the 19th century.
Oh, wow. That's much earlier than I would have expected.
I know. I was shocked too, but I'm finding out all sorts of crazy stuff about the 19th century.
That's amazing.
Man.
We're still using copiers and fax machines like it's the 19th copiers and fax machines.
Yeah.
Because we had the fax in the 19th century as well with the automatic writing system.
There you go. But yeah, so now we start to see that we're getting sort of our 2 sides set up, and how is this all going to go down? And clearly they want to drain John Blackthorne's head of all of sort of the Western fighting stuff that he knows. Because as you said, dude's got a lot of scars. He's been in a lot of scraps. The fact that he has that many scars and he's still walking around, maybe he's good at it too.
Yeah. And so he gets offered a job as... I didn't look up that title name, but it is apparently some samurai title that he gets there where he becomes the engine.
Hatamoto?
Yeah.
So Anjin just means pilot. So
Yeah.
you're talking about the Hatamoto title.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Hatamoto is like it's not explicitly a samurai, but it's sort of like if you were in an English court, you would be sort of one of the gentlemen of the chamber. Like you're a dude who's supposed to be close to him and be looking after him.
Ah, gotcha. Or if you're in a biker gang, you're an affiliate or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So it's not just making you just like a regular old knight. Hatamoto is like you're up a couple of ranks.
So you're like a page now.
No, remember, page is the people who help out the squires. Well, it goes page, squire, knight.
Oh, so he's a squire now.
No. He's above. He's above.
Oh,
knight.
he's above a squire. Oh, he's above a knight. I thought he was a knight now.
No. Hatamoto is saying that you're not just like some regular soldier dude. You're like one of my close-in dudes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Oh, cool. He's a knight. He's got a seat at the round table now.
Yeah. Pretty
Gotcha.
much that. Yeah. And so enough of that. We get to do our start of the romance novel. When John Blackthorne does the I'm sorry about your husband. I'm like, oh, that was such a multi-edged comment.
She was like, yeah, we're both real sorry. So sorry.
Well, and he was also kind of saying, I'm sorry you had to have that guy as your husband too.
Yep, but he did have a good death. So there was that. Like he brought honor to their family in dying.
Right. And then some more like subtle Japanesery where, Toranaga's got the books and he like he's showing them to John Blackthorne. He's like, but I can't read this, so I'm going to have to get them translated. And it'll take a while. It'll take a long time.
I thought he was just going to toss him into the ocean. I'm surprised he didn't, but he probably wants him as leverage just in case.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure he'd also like to check out some of the other claims that John Blackthorne was making about the Portuguese. Like, there's some good intel in there.
Yeah, that is for sure. And then he gets to teach Toranaga how to dive.
Yes, okay. So this was so funny to me. What did you think about the amount of clothing that Blackthorne and Toranaga were wearing?
It was interesting because he was just in like his little loincloth underpants thingy with banana hammock basically. And then Toranaga basically dived in with all his clothes on.
And I was like, that was for American TV. I mean, maybe Blackthorne would have been a little embarrassed because he's Christian about being naked in front of women, maybe. But the fact that Toranaga like had this whole big thing on, that was nonsense. Like people in the
he would have drowned.
Yeah, people in the 17th century, if they knew how to swim, they all swam naked. All of them. Men, women, everyone.
Yeah, well, you also wouldn't swim in a dress because you'd fucking drown. Like, especially with multiple dresses on at the same time.
The whole 19th century thing about putting on, like, bathing costumes, somewhere in the 18th century, Christianity really, really, really sexualized nudity.
Oh, was that recently?
I mean, there was definitely a thing about, like, in polite society, and when you're doing society stuff, you need to be covered up and formal and everything. But, everybody's living in, like, the same room all the time. Like, not being naked around people was pretty much impossible.
Oh, that's true. And they all slept in the same bed, too, which is something that is important to remember. Like, if you had strangers in your house, you all slept in the same big fucking bed.
Yeah, if you were on the road and you went to an inn, you'd be like, well, you can pay this much to get a room to yourself, or you can pay a fraction of that to share a bed with a couple of people that you have never met and will never see again.
Even kings and queens slept in the bed with a bunch of fucking people oftentimes. It's wild. Like,
oh, yeah. Yeah, they're gentlemen of the chamber, they're ladies in waiting. That was one thing that they would do. They would sleep in their beds with them and there to, like, look after them. Yeah.
I didn't know who the other people were sleeping in their bed. I just knew that there were a lot of people in the bed, and I'm like, damn, so this is like a California king? Well, I guess they just had him there like, you're a bed warmer. Like, you know, like...
Yes, yeah.
You get in there, warm up those sheets.
Yeah, you're in these drafty frickin' castles, and it's cold. And so, yeah, you put more warm bodies in there to be warm. And besides, the way that they were building furniture, beds were expensive. So if you wanted to sleep by yourself, there's a nice little pile of straw on the floor over there for you. But
it sounds insane to us, but it's probably because we're all mentally ill from being so estranged from each other.
I guess you had to get really good at sleeping through everybody else's snoring.
But, I mean, that's how every other fucking animal on Earth sleeps. We're the only ones
Right.
who just decided we're all going to be like bees in a hive and sleep in our own, like, cubby.
Chamber, yeah.
Or the Japanese have really taken it to the next level, too, because, like those chairs, have you seen those little mini hotels they have where it's just like, you're in a drawer.
Right.
It's not for me. Neither the Japanese subway system, although I think it would be funny to see any American, just unbeknownst to them, put onto the platform of the Japanese subway system just to experience that once of getting mashed into the human pile and then have, ushers take a running start screaming and blowing whistles and just plow into the back of you and smash you into the sea. Yeah.
So question, would you rather be in one of those sleeping drawers or be sharing a hotel bed with 3 strangers?
Ooh. A drawer. I'll take the drawer every time. Okay. But again, is that just a product of our mental illness from being estranged from each other? I don't know.
How
about you? Which one did you take?
Because, I'd definitely go with the drawer, partly because,
you wouldn't even fit in that drawer. We'd have to fold you up like fucking origami to fit you into a Japanese sleeping drawer.
I'd have to pay for the extra
They don't have 6 foot tall Japanese drawers.
I'd have to get the special foreigner model. But you never know, when you're sharing a bed with 3 other people, one of them might have fleas, man.
I was actually, I was thinking of Shaq fell through the wall of his hotel room in Japan.
Oh, God.
One time when he was sitting on the toilet and he was stuck, so he fell through the wall trying to get out. And that's you in one of these tiny little Japanese hotels. They're just not built for people over 5'6".
I'll have to show you sometime the picture of me staying in the name just fell out of my head, but it's one of those hotels that's built around the hot springs, and I'm standing in the door frame, and just standing on my flat feet, I'm touching the top of the shoji frame.
That's hilarious.
And what's really funny is the Japanese subways, there are some places like that, where, like, again, I can, like, put my hand on top of my head and I'm, like, touching the HVAC tubes above. But you sort of looked around and everybody under about 25 has to run through the Tokyo subway system with their head ducked down too, because they're tall kids.
Oh, yeah, they've all been fed well. And yeah, because everybody else was like World War II and all that, Korean War, and they had a lot of privation.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the very nice man, when his little subway card ran out of money, I just hand over like a 500 yen bill to the subway guy, and he goes and like refills the card for me. Like, would you have done that in in a New York subway? Just hand money across to somebody when your kid's trapped on the other side?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, but in the Japanese subway, you're like, obviously that's what you do.
Well, there's like kitty cats laying on the on the turn. What is that thing called? Turnstile.
Turnstile. Yeah. No, I mean, that was such a different experience, but so glad I got to do it. Well, unlike the last couple of times that we've done this, we have no idea what's going to happen in the next episode because it hasn't happened yet.
No, this time we didn't try to do 2 episodes at once because there was no other episode to do. And because we have proven time and time again, we cannot do more than 1 episode at once.
There's just too much going on. But yeah, So yeah, the intrigue is starting. And so I know you're not a big sort of Game of Thrones intrigue fan, but how's the intrigue working for you in this show?
It's fascinating, and I really do need to stop being the guy who screams my intentions from 6 miles off and continues screaming them and beating a bagpipe as I'm going. Like, I know you can't beat a bagpipe, but like, yeah, I've just always been that guy who is always yelling my intentions and then doing things, and it doesn't always work out. So maybe a little trickery would help me out in the future. A little deception, maybe. Look over here and do something else over here, kind of thing.
Yeah, because you've got John Blackthorne, who's the you you're talking about. Then we've got the Jesuits who think they're really subtle, and then there's the Japanese who are like, "You're cute. You guys think you're subtle."
Watch us having 3D chess battles you can't even fathom.
Right.
Oh, there was a great quote at the end of the episode where John is talking about England. And so she says that the weather is, because he's saying I love this weather. I could get used to this weather because it's like Southern California. Yeah. And he's like, she goes, well, it's about to be winter and the winters here suck. And he goes, well, you should try England. It's humid in summer, endless winters, and famine every 6 years. And that's something we always forget. Famine was part of life in everyone's life back in the day. It wasn't just one famine in your life. Every 6 years was kind of the deal.
Right. And so that was the whole thing. You'd have all of these kids close together. And if they were too young when famine came along, that kid was toast. You're like, well, this kid's not going to make it because they're just too little and they don't have any of the reserves.
Yeah. And even in the teeth of like nobility, you can see evidence of famine. So it hit even the upper class. When a famine hit, everybody was fucking hungry. And that's just a really, really important thing for all of us to remember how incredibly lucky we are to have the food network that we have. Like we have food availability that has only existed in the Mayans, like for 300 years. Like, that's the only place I've ever seen it anywhere else. Jesus Christ, Benta, could you please stop? Yeah. She's like, this episode is fucking over.
But sabotage on.
Yeah, it's time for treats.
It's time for me.
Yeah, so it was the Mayan Empire from like 600 to 900. They had food abundance the way we do now, but it's wild to think that even 100 years ago, the food abundance we enjoy, it just didn't exist ever. It's wild.
Yeah, and so as much as we sort of bag on American food for having all of this prepared food and shelf-stable food, there is a very, very good reason for that. People were showing up to sign up for the U.S. Army in World War I and World War II malnourished with like rickets, just short. Even in the U.S. in the early 20th century, there was still a lot of basically, famine cycles.
Somewhere in my notes, I have the statistics, but it was an absurdly high number of the people who were drafted for World War I were unfit for service due to the effects of malnourishment.
Yeah, and even in World War II. And so the fact that we got so obsessed with like canned food and frozen food and food preservatives and all of these things as science and mechanization were really ramping up. We're like, oh, well, that's when, the American food system went to shit. And I was like, no, that's when people stopped dying of starvation and having all of these diseases of malnutrition all the goddamn time. I mean, canned food as it existed after World War II was a goddamn miracle for most people in the world.
And food additives were a huge thing because people were not getting any nutrition from, when they could get bread, they were getting no nutrition from it, which is why they started adding vitamins to stuff. Because we've overfarmed the shit out of all the land and it wasn't producing nutritious food. So we had to add these different things in order to give people the nutrition they needed.
And that was also partly because they were so the really nutritious part of grains, if you take them out, your flour lasts longer. And so that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to sort of make it so your flour wouldn't go rancid and rot. And so they hadn't made that connection. And so that's why they had to start adding the vitamins back in. But now that we can do like nitrogen tombing of agricultural products, sort of like putting them in a big room full of nitrogen, so the rancidity, now you can have longer lasting whole flours.
Well, and our houses are climate controlled, so there really
Yes.
isn't the issue of humidity and all that led to the rancidity, right?
That and we have plastic and stuff, so you can keep the millipedes out of the flour.
Yeah, trading millipedes for microplastics. Winning.
Millipedes for microplastics. Okay, I think that's how we need to end this episode.
There we go.
Awesome. All right, we'll see everybody next week.
Yes, absolutely.
For Shogun episode 4.
Yes, whatever happens in that one.
Yes.
We will be forced to wait and find out.
All right, sounds great.
See you guys next week.
You can find more of Jamie and how he can make you stronger at plagueofstrength.com. You can learn more about old American food on my other podcast, The History of American Food. And you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.